Hey, Little Miss Recappers, Amy here. Aside from our usual trashy and naughty language, this episode is going to contain talk of rape, child abuse, child pornography, religious trauma, just a whole host of difficult topics. So if any of this is triggering for you, I suggest you skip this episode. And I also want to just say on a personal level, we've tried really hard to remain fair and to disclose our biases. So, if we are talking a little bit about religion and politics, I hope that we've done a good job in maintaining our objectivity. And I hope you stick with us. And if you can't, that's fine. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks and enjoy the episode. Welcome to Little Miss Recap, the podcast where we go out drinking and get up at the crack of dawn to talk about the Duggar family.
Because why else would we get up at the crack of dawn on a Saturday morning but to talk about the Duggar family?
Yes, I opened my eyes, my alarm went off at 7 and I was like, do I really want to talk about these people? But you know what? There's no better time to harness my rage
than first thing in the morning. Yeah, let's get it out of our system, and then we can have a very clear, we can have our own shiny happy day. I have to say, I felt like it was a real loss that we didn't use REM's Shiny Happy People, but I'm pretty sure Michael Stipe would be like, no.
Although,
no, can't have my song.
Although, he might appreciate that they were exposing them.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, I could see them using Shiny Happy People and, melting it down at the end as picture of the Duggars burned.
Right. Yeah, no, instead they had the creepy, vocal of, Amen.
I just went all Gen X video director on you.
That's okay. I like it. It would have been great.
Yeah. So, I'm Amy Archer. I'm your host, and I'm here with the wonderful, beautiful, performance art having, I don't know what else to describe you as, cat loving Amanda Lipnack, Radel. Hello.
Good morning, Miss Amy. Good morning, friends. We're really excited and terrified to talk about this.
Well, I bring up the performance art because you went to something last night.
I did. We went to go see a performance of 12th Night. If you're in the Philadelphia area and you are free between now and June 25th, highly recommend going to see 12th Night at the Wilma Theater.
That's fun.
A good friend of mine is an actor and she's in it, and she's fantastic. And the show's fantastic, but through most of it, you're going, huh. I mean, this is Shakespeare, so I recognize that piece. But, we have a blow-up pool and skateboards. And
was somebody giving birth in the blow-up pool?
No, we did not have that, unlike the rest of our reality TV thing. I have to ask you before we jump into this, do you now feel really dirty watching TLC shows in the way that we do?
This changed my opinion about TLC.
Same. I was like, ooh, wow.
Somebody along the way called it the lurking channel, and I was like,
yeah, that is exactly what it is. I mean, we joke that we learn things, and occasionally we do learn things, but the fact that it was the Duggars that really made TLC what it is today is like, oh, yeah, I feel a little complicit.
So but as Amanda's
I'm not giving up 90 Day.
We're talking about Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets from 2023, 4 episodes on Amazon Prime. I don't know how to describe my rage. Blinding? Would that be?
I feel like blinding is maybe, dialing it down a little bit. There's a multitude of reasons why this is enraging. And yes, it is the story of the Duggars, but the Duggars are really just the entree into this crazy world.
Yes.
And we use them because many people in the world know them. So why don't we talk about our experiences with the Duggars as well as any biases we have. Let's just own them from the jump.
So, I mean, I am an atheist. Anyone who knows me knows this.
Same.
I grew up Roman Catholic, so I do have some familiarity with the Catholic Church. I don't necessarily hate it. I don't believe it. Period.
Yeah.
I do want to tell everyone, if you are super religious, do not listen to this episode.
I don't feel like you're gonna like us a lot after this if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
deeply convictedly
Like, if you're
religious.
a fundamentalist, I don't know why you like me in the first place,
Right,
but
I don't feel like we have a lot of fundamentalists that are listening to
hey,
us. I mean, I could be
fundamentalist
wrong.
listeners, you
Right.
might wanna turn off.
Yeah, you might
Um,
wanna skip to the next episode of whatever it is.
but I just, I feel I come from the place of, like I do with most things, "Hey, fly your freak flag. Whatever you believe, you believe." But I have a problem when A, you're forcing your beliefs on other people,
Right.
when B, you are forcing your belief on children,
Yes.
and C, when you're using your religious beliefs to impact policy that affects other people.
Agreed, agreed, agreed.
All right, so why don't you talk about and as for the Duggars, like I didn't really know much about them.
No, I just knew they had a lot of kids, and they kept having more and more kids,
Yeah, I
and they had a
did
TV
watch,
show.
like we were talking about off air. I did watch John and Kate plus 8
Mhm. O
occasionally. Like I wasn't like a
occasionally.
religious viewer. No pun
Right.
intended.
No pun intended, and they weren't a religious family, like, yes, they had 8 children, but the story was she had sextuplets, like,
Yes.
that was the
Yes.
catch, not that they were
Yes.
religious, not that they
Correct.
I don't think any moment of John and Kate's life they went, "Let's have sextuplets. Let's repopulate the world." They just had sextuplets.
So let's hear your experience with the Duggars, your biases. Let's get them all out of the way.
Sure. So, and Leo clearly has thoughts as well.
Mhm.
So, um, I am an atheist as well, though I do attend a Unitarian church.
Which we talked
Um,
about.
yes, which
Hmm.
it's very comfortable for me because it's a very easy place to not believe in anything specifically about God.
Right.
There's a lot of beliefs, but God is kind of an optional one of them. Um, so I was raised pretty much a heathen. My dad's Jewish, my
Mm.
mom's Presbyterian, and religion just was not a thing in my
Okay.
childhood, except I went to private school. I learned more about religion in school than I did at home because I went to private school so they could actually talk
I
about
did
it.
too.
But
I went to a Catholic school.
it wasn't even Christian based schools. It wasn't even an
Mm.
indoctrination. It was just like we said the Lord's Prayer when we said the Pledge of Allegiance. It was just a
Yeah.
thing we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in fact, I went through a period where I could not say one without the other. It just
Mm.
kind of like flowed one right into the other. Um, so my issues are very much like yours. People can believe whatever the heck they want to
Hmm.
believe. I don't care. You want to sit in your house and have, daily worship and do whatever you want.
Sure.
Great.
Have at it.
Cool.
Hmm.
My issue is when you force your children into this world, don't show them any other options
Hmm.
and then shun them when they don't fit nicely into that mold.
Hmm.
It's when you try to proselytize. I have no time for proselytizing.
Hmm.
Um, and when you decide other people need to live the way that you do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
say all the time, like I'm fair. We're going to try to stick away from our own personal politics, but I have a lot of beliefs, many of which are around queer rights. Like if if you don't if you don't want to be gay, don't go. If you're not gay, don't.
Don't be
Who
gay.
cares? Don't be gay.
Right.
No one's forcing you to get gay married. Like
Yes.
you don't
Yes.
like it, don't do it. It's not a big deal. Like
Yeah.
it's just not that difficult. But it's the forcing of other people that really bugs me, and that is so much of the mission of the IBLP is really to impact the world. So why don't we
Yeah.
just
Let's
jump
just
into
jump in
this?
because I have a lot more
Because
to
there's a lot
say.
of acronyms and there's a lot of things like we said, we could talk about this for 7 days. So we need to
So
be
we're
thoughtful.
we're gonna go episode by episode with just some big bullet points
Yep.
and,
Yep.
and
Yep.
just lead the conversation from there. So I have a list of people in the documentary. It's not a
Okay.
complete list, but we see Jill Duggar and Derek Dillard. Okay, because
Yes.
she's married.
And she's
She's
the
the
lone Duggar who speaks in this documentary.
Yep, she's the fourth oldest.
Hmm.
Okay, she's also one of Josh's victims.
Yes.
Yes, we see Deanna Duggar, who is Jim Bob's sister. We see Amy King and hero of the entire series, Dylan King.
I loved him. He cracked me up. I actually really loved the two of them.
I
And
love the two of them, and I love how he just sits there and just
everything she says, he's like, huh?
he's reacting like he's heard this. He's hearing it for the first time. He's the
Yes.
audience. He's
He
the audience.
is. He is.
And
And
then go
yeah,
ahead.
anyway, continue with the people.
Okay, then we have Jen Suthpan, she does Fundy Fridays on YouTube.
Yes,
He's a
she's an
YouTuber.
interesting one.
We have John Peace. He's a pastor and journalist. And I always write descriptions to help myself. I wrote bald, skinny, young dude. So
Mhm.
that's who he is.
That's accurate.
We
He
have
was bald, skinny,
Jim
young
and
dude,
Bobby Holt.
who I have a lot to say about these
Yeah.
people.
Professor Dumez. She is a sociologist, I think.
Yes,
And
and why
then,
isn't this our job? That
yes,
as I'm listening
yes.
to her, I'm like, this should be what Amy and I do for a living. But
And then we have various people who left the lifestyle and were homeschooled, like Chad Harris, Tara and Floyd, Tia Levings,
Tia,
Heather Heath, Brooke Arnold, Laura Smith. That's all I have. I may have
yeah,
missed people, and I apologize. I was doing the best I can, but those
there's a
are
lot.
sort of the main players.
Yeah, and I listened to a podcast, which you can talk about at the end, with Tia Levings on A Little Bit Culty. I
Okay.
love this woman. I love
Okay.
her so
Yeah.
much. I want to become her best friend.
Yeah. She was cool. All
Mhm.
right. So you took some notes for episode 1, which is Meet the Duggars, I think it's called. I forget what it's
Yes.
called. So
Yeah, that's exactly what it's called.
give us
And
this
really,
bullshit.
it was this bullshit. It was just really setting the stage of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
didn't dig really deeply into any of the issues,
Mm-hmm.
but it was introducing you to who the Duggars were, if you were not familiar. And the Duggars at this point are, I think, finished with 19 children, though
Ugh.
they had their 20th pregnancy on television.
I have thoughts
Um,
about that later.
oh, well, yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll get there. So we find out about the family. We find out about Jim Bob. He grew up Christian,
Mm-hmm.
missionary Christian,
Mm-hmm.
or missionary Baptist,
Mm-hmm.
but not quite in as far into the conservative world as he winds up going. And I'm not casting aspersions on the term conservative. He's just gotten more and more conservative
Yeah.
Christian as time has gone on. And Jim Bob met Michelle. Michelle grew up in I'm going to call it a regular family. Like, she did not grow up in a fundamentalist Christian world
Right.
at all.
Right.
She was
She
as
was
she
a
said,
cheerleader.
she was Amy. She got caught up in that boyfriend girlfriend mix.
Well, we all know she dropped to her knees pretty quick when she met Jim
Yes,
Bob.
she did when she met Jim Bob. Yeah, and I actually wrote Jim Bob sucked her into the cult, but oh god. Okay. So yes, they meet, they fall in love, they get married at 17 and 19. So
Mm-hmm.
they're babies and they
Mm-hmm.
start having babies.
Mm-hmm.
And they have Josh first, and then she'd been on the pill, they have Josh, she goes back on the pill and then has a miscarriage, and they're convinced that the pill caused the miscarriage.
And I love one of the faults, I think, of this documentary, and there aren't many, but
I thought this was really good.
one of the faults is that they tend to just gloss over this misinformation
Right.
without correcting it. They needed somebody, they need a medical doctor there to be like, okay,
That's
well,
not how this
maybe
works.
that happened in this very rare case, but here's the odds of that happening, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, this is not what really happens.
This is how this shit spreads, guys. Like, people say it from a position of authority, and we just keep going. And
there are probably millions of people who have watched the Duggars say that Michelle was on the pill, so they had a miscarriage, and they had to pray for God's forgiveness. And now we've got millions of people not on the pill because they're convinced it's going to cause a miscarriage.
Well, I will tell you that I got pregnant on the pill.
Okay, well, there you go.
But I have 2 healthy children. And
yes,
here's what I did wrong. I was switching pills, and the doctor told me you have to use a backup method for 30 days or 60 days or whatever.
Yep.
I didn't hear that part. So it was user error that I
yes,
got
that is
pregnant
user.
on. Yes.
Most time when people get pregnant on birth control, it's user error.
Yes. Go on.
So anyway, so then we start going into how they start having all these kids, and the whole goal of this, and we can talk about the Quiverful movement, which they don't talk a ton about the Quiverful piece of it in the documentary, but I was well aware of the Quiverful movement for a long time.
From Plathville, I was aware of it.
Yeah, and I knew about it well before then. I had a friend who fell deep into this well years ago, so she would educate me.
Okay.
So the Quiverful movement actually comes from a Bible passage, which I don't remember the actual passage, but it basically says, if you want to go into war battle, you want as many arrows in your quiver as possible, which makes sense. You want as much ammo to go into the world.
Sure.
Well, they see themselves as people who are doing they're God's soldiers on earth.
Yeah, they're battling Satan on a daily basis.
Right. And if we make more children and make more Christians in this mold, only in this mold, these guys would look at a Roman Catholic and go, you're not Christian. They'd look at a Mormon and go, you're not Christian. They'd look at a Methodist and go, you're not Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those people are Christians. They want to create more in this mold because their goal really is to take over national politics and take over how the world is run.
Which gives me incredible anxiety.
Me too.
As
I
somebody,
don't want these people in charge of me.
as somebody who teaches in my literature classes The Handmaid's Tale, and like I live
Right.
and breathe The Handmaid's Tale.
This was not supposed to be an instruction manual, friends.
Read how that entire book went down and how it all started. I mean,
This is how it starts.
terrifying. It starts with a bunch of people who are scared.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
really the thing that I just kept hearing over and over again is it's just fear.
Yeah.
It's just
Gilead
fear.
was created out of fear.
Fear.
100%.
They create this world out of fear. They're afraid of the secular world. The Duggars didn't have a television in their home.
Mm-mm.
I love the fact that his sister, Deanna, had to call them if there was a tornado warning because they would have no idea
Mm-hmm.
that a tornado's coming, which is a real problem in Northwest Arkansas because that happen a lot.
Yeah.
And so even when they started the show, his sister was like, "You don't even have a television," and he's
Yeah.
like, "Well, but this is a ministry."
Right. The red flag.
This
red
is
flag.
a ministry.
This is a ministry.
We watch a lot of TLC stuff. Ain't none of this a ministry. This is people making poor choices for our entertainment.
100%.
Which makes me sound like a terrible person, but that I enjoy that. But yeah, this was their ministry, and
yeah.
towards the end, we meet, or middle-ish, we meet Jim and Bobby Holt.
Oh.
The fact that these two people are trying to paint themselves as people who did the right thing is appalling.
They only did the right thing because it affected them.
Yep. Because it affected their daughter.
Right. If Josh Duggar was not engaged to their daughter, they would not have done the right thing.
No.
Mm-mm.
No. And their version of the right thing was... So, let's go back. So, Josh gets accused of touching his sisters.
Trigger warning, guys. We're going to talk about sexual assault. Yeah.
There's a lot of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse in this.
I'll put trigger warnings at the beginning as well.
Okay, good. Because actually, most people, if they know about the Duggars, if they didn't watch the show, they know about Josh Duggar. Because he was accused of molesting his sisters. As Jim Bob said, he just touched them over their clothes. They didn't even know it happened.
They didn't even know it happened, Amanda.
No harm, no foul. No big problem. Jim takes his son eventually to the police, basically to kind of scare him straight. Sort of?
I think so. Or like it was performative, which...
It was performative, I think.
Yeah.
I don't really trust the motivation that anything that Jim Bob does.
Me either.
Particularly in reference to how he treats his children. And the Holtz, like Jim Holt went with him, and the cop was like, "Well, if you do this again, we're gonna have a problem."
Well, it was that trooper who's now serving 66 years in jail for child pornography.
66 years
I'm like,
child pornography.
I'm like, wait a
and
minute.
was a good friend of the Duggars.
I'm like, we're glossing over this?
Right.
Hold on.
Right. Excuse me. Let's stop. This cop gave a finger wagging to a kid.
Yep.
And he was just as bad. So eventually we'll talk more about what winds up happening to Josh. But a lot of this stuff happened in 2002 and 2003. The show started in 2008.
Yeah.
So Jim Bob and Michelle knew about all of this. And they sent him off to some IBLP something.
What is your impression of Michelle?
If I have to hear that sweet voice one more time, I'm going to murder somebody.
I mean, you have to do what mommy says.
Yes, that's right. It's so
I say and you obey. Oh my God.
Oh God. Her voice is so creepy to me.
She is so meek that I didn't even know her first name for 2 episodes of this.
Oh, wow.
I was like, what's her name again? I just kept calling her Jim Bob's wife. Like, what does that tell you?
Yeah, she's meek, but you also know she's just as diabolical as Jim Bob. She was
Oh,
just
I
as
don't let this
calculating.
voice fool me. Mm-mm,
Uh-uh. Oh,
mm-mm.
no.
Nope.
No, and they talked about how they raise women to have that voice, and it's a lot of the Mormon fundamental actually,
Yeah.
some Mormon the keep sweet stuff. It's like,
Yes.
"Keep
Yes.
yourself
Yes.
small and dainty, and
Yes.
then you'll stay home and have all of your gender roles and make hash brown casserole, and it'll be great."
Uh, yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, I had a friend who was the youngest of 14, and I was as an only child in particular, I was fascinated by what life looked like in their house. So,
Yeah.
like, when they were showing kind of the scenes of what does the kitchen look like and what does the laundry room look like with, like, 3 washers and dryers, like, there's a part of me that's like, "Wow, that's
How
fascinating."
many
Like,
kids were there?
my friend was, one of 14.
Okay. So
Yeah.
my first husband was the oldest of 7,
Okay.
which is a much smaller scale,
But that's still
but it's still
huge.
a big family. And I witnessed and kind of lived all of this big
Yeah.
person stuff.
The reality is when you have that many children, you cannot parent your children. There's just not enough hours in the day, which is why we then parentify the older children to raise the younger ones. They talk about the buddy system where
Mhm.
an older kid
Mhm.
gets a younger kid and they're
Mhm.
buddies.
Mhm.
Uh,
Is that
Buddy
in this
system,
episode? That's in this first
I don't remember.
episode, right?
I think it's in this first
Yeah.
episode. They talk
Okay.
about it a couple times, but like the fact that they call it the buddy system
I
seems
know.
to make it seem nice and sweet.
I
No,
know.
it's disgusting.
It's just so hard on people. Like I know people who were parentified as children
Mm.
and they have a lot of issues now with
Yeah.
that. Do you know what I mean? And they're
Yeah.
working through them and look, everybody needs therapy in my opinion. Everybody could
Oh, I think
benefit
everybody
from
needs to go
it.
to therapy.
Everybody could use it, you know. And parents, so many parents out there try their best and do their
Oh,
best
yeah.
and the kids end up in therapy anyway. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a slight, it's not,
It's
a
not an
bad
indictment on
thing.
someone's
Right.
parenting.
Exactly. But it does something to you when you're parentified as a child. It really
It
does.
does.
And
It does.
I lived through this with my first husband. It really messes you up in a way, and you got to take care of that.
I think it's no surprise that, like, if we look at the Brown family, now they're not
Oh boy,
IBLP,
a knife
but
to the kidneys.
kidneys. I'm loving seeing Christine live her best sexy
Me
girl
too.
life. Go
Me
for
too.
it. But I think there's a reason that like Logan and Aspen and Leon have not had children
Oh yeah.
because they raise their kids.
The same with the Plaths.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Ethan
Mhm.
and Olivia haven't had children
Mm-mm.
yet, which
Nope.
I think is really good because I don't know if the 2 of them are gonna make it or not. Not because I
Yeah.
don't believe in their love, I just think neither of them are equipped to have a great marriage.
And Mariah and
Um,
Micah are kind of like just peacing out and living their best
yeah,
lives, and yeah, there's something there.
there's something there.
Mhm.
So, anyway,
Okay, back to the
so
Duggars.
back to the Duggars, and so we kind of wind up sort of at the end once we've introduced all of the Duggars and all of the
Mhm. Mhm.
Duggarness of it all.
Mhm.
And why don't we move because I think we'll still jump around
Yeah.
episodes and
Yeah.
episodes because 'cause there'll be themes, but let's move on to number 2
Okay.
here. So what are your thoughts on 2?
So at the end of episode 1, we get an introduction to Bill Gothard.
Mhm.
So Bill Gothard this is again unbelievable to me that one semi-educated white dude, mediocre white dude,
Yeah,
has created a list of rules and laws
that
that
we all
so
have to
many
live by.
people listen to.
And that he's telling people how to parent and how to be a good spouse when he is
Mhm.
neither married nor has children.
This this
Discuss.
this sets me off because
Me too.
one of the reasons I left higher education was I was teaching at Jesuit University and we had just come out of the pandemic and I was looking for a little bit more flexibility in my schedule, working
Mhm.
from home a day or two a week. And we are ruled there by Jesuit priests who don't marry and never had kids.
Sure.
And they don't want flexibility for you because they don't understand what it is to have a family.
Right, they don't which is why I've always had an issue with Catholic priests giving
Hmm.
advice to people about marriage and
Oh, they did
children
that for me
because
too.
sure,
Hmm.
and that's what they're taught to do and all that, and
Hmm.
it's no shade to an individual priest or another, I'm sure some have given great
Yes,
advice in their day.
some are great. I have a
Right, I
friend
mean
who's Boys go to a local Catholic church. She loves the priest.
Mhm.
He's very, understanding. He's kind of tuned in. He's, younger. He gets
Yep,
it. You know what I
that's it.
mean? But not all of
But
them
yeah,
do.
this Bill Gothard guy is
Hmm.
so freaking scary and so diabolical.
So Bill Gothard creates the Institute of, remind me what the BLP stands for.
Institute of Basic Life Principles.
Thank
This
you.
man has never met
Hmm.
an acronym he
Hmm.
does not like.
Yes. So his whole thing is like there's a certain way to live. Now he has this umbrella system, guys. The whole thing is
Yeah.
based on this umbrella system,
Mhm.
which is hilarious.
It
So
is.
there is this huge umbrella over everything, which is Christ.
Right.
And then there are a set of smaller umbrellas under the bigger umbrella. Why you would need another umbrella under a big umbrella? I don't know.
I've never been one to have a
Mm-mm.
second umbrella under a higher umbrella, but go on.
So then the second tier is like the pastor or the minister or whatever, the church leader, and then the third tier is like the husband, and then the
Mhm.
parents, because the
Well,
wife
the
can't.
husband and the wife and
Right.
then the
The
children.
wife can't be even with the husband. The wife is a
No, the
smaller umbrella under the husband.
egalitarian marriage is
Mhm.
not a thing in this world.
And then the kids are under the smallest. Now, he believed and told coliseums full of people that if you
Mhm.
stepped out from under the umbrella, Satan was going to get you.
Right, Satan is lurking right at the edge of
Yep.
the shadow of this
Yep.
umbrella,
Mhm.
ready to nab you, and
Mhm.
one thing I do think we need to say is Bill Gothard doesn't have a church of his own. His
Right.
model
Right.
his model was to go into primarily Southern Baptist churches,
Yep.
very, very conservative Southern Baptist churches,
Mhm.
and he would come and speak
Mhm.
about his beliefs and introduce people to the institute, or
Yep.
he would bring people to conferences where they would learn and then they would go back to their own churches and educate this way.
Yeah, they called it like the
So
church to people model.
right, so in a lot
Mhm.
of ways, he was able to fly under the radar for a while in
Yeah.
the cult world
Yeah.
because he didn't have a lot of the traditional things we think about of the cults, like, going back to even Yellow Jackets, like,
Mhm.
Lottie if we joke about her cult, which is kind of a cult, but, like, she had a location, she was the
Yes.
charismatic leader specifically to these people. He didn't quite have that,
Yeah.
so he was able to fly under that
It was
radar.
just his horrific ideology spreading throughout the
Right, like
world.
wildfire throughout
Mhm.
Southern churches.
Mostly through the South, yeah. So, the chain of command traditionally was the children, then the wife, then the husband, then Bill Gothard, then Christ.
Mhm.
And so somebody says, and this is something that struck a chord with me because we see this a lot in recent politics.
'Kay,
And I want to make this clear as we get into the political world that I am a Democrat, I am a liberal.
same.
However, I have many friends who are what I call normal Republicans
Yep,
or conservatives, people who don't buy into this I guess Trump stuff, you know what I mean, where a
yep,
trans person can't use a bathroom or whatever.
right.
So I just want to make that distinction. Just as there are extremes on the left and the right,
There's
you
a
know.
great swath in the middle where we can all meet
Yes, yes.
and have and come to a common consensus on things.
However, in politics a lot you hear this idea of returning America, like making America great again. And
Mhm.
then, well, when was America great? Well, it was great in the 50s and 60s. And somebody says this is Bill Gothard. Like he
Yep.
wants to return things to when everything was in favor of the white man. The white
Yep.
man, not woman.
The white man no, exactly,
Right.
and yes, this
When
is
black people didn't have rights, when gay people didn't have rights, when women didn't have the rights that they have.
well, they
That to
even talk
them
about
is the grand old time.
it's the goal, and they even talk about how some of this so everybody in the IPL not everybody, most people in the IBLP homeschool their children
Mhm. Mhm.
with these wisdom booklets,
Oh,
which oh, the wisdom
we're
booklets.
getting there.
Um, but a lot of this was a reaction to desegregation
Yes.
because people
Yes.
were upset white people were upset that they were going to have their children go to school with people who weren't white.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they brought them home. Like
Mhm.
it's so
Mhm.
yes, we don't want to get into our own political beliefs here, but so much of what they are doing is either a reaction to politics
Yeah.
or it is to further a specific political ideology.
Right. It's really hard when their goal is when the goal of IBLP is to create leaders to infiltrate the national political scene. It's hard to talk about this without bringing in politics. We're going to do our
Correct.
best, but
Yeah, but we can get into people like the Madison Cawthorns of it all,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
he's an IBLP kid.
So that's Bill Gothard, and he is kind of
Yeah.
looming over all of this, okay? So now in episode 2, we see Josh is accused of molesting 5 underage girls. Some of them were his sisters. The trooper, like we talked about, is now in jail. That gave him a warning. Jill is upset that now, what did you think of Jill Duggar's reaction to this? Because in current day, she's sitting there with her husband, and
Mhm.
she's very upset that this came out. Like
Yeah.
that it came out. Not that it
Yeah.
happened. I mean, I'm sure she's upset that happened, but that's not what she's
Right.
focusing on right now. Her
Yeah, I
focus
think
is, I didn't want anyone to know about this.
yeah, and I think it's a couple of things. I think first of all, no one wants their own trauma displayed on national television,
Right.
period.
Right.
Second of all, they made her parade around as if she forgave him, and they used her and Jessa, I think it's Jessa,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as, you know, they basically sent them out on the Josh Duggar apology tour.
It was so
Horrific.
hard to watch.
Those
Megyn
2
Kelly
young women.
interview
Yes.
these women and ask them questions about their sexual assaults,
Right.
and them to be sitting there downplaying it.
Like, "It's fine,
Oh,
we
God.
understand. He just made a mistake. It's not a big deal." And I think that's a lot of her reaction. She didn't want this to get out because she knew what it would become, because in their world, Josh wasn't the bad guy. They were.
That's true. That's true.
They were the ones who tempted him. They were
This fills me with rage towards Michelle Duggar.
same.
Like, and I don't know why I'm just focusing on her. Jim Bob is just as to blame, just
He
as
is.
culpable, but like, stand up for your daughters. Oh my
Right.
God.
The
Anyway.
mama bear in me would be like,
Mm-hmm.
"And we're
Mm-hmm.
getting the hell out of here.
Yes.
I'm not sending him off to some little fake camp, having him come back, and everything's fine." He came back a changed man. I could
So
tell.
we see this 2015 interview with Megyn Kelly, and she asks them, "How'd you first learn about this in 2002?" And Jim Bob says, "Well, he was curious about girls and he touched them over their clothes and they didn't even know about it." And then he
Mhm.
talks about sending Josh away to the IBLP camp, which was bullshit and bogus.
Right.
And Megyn Kelly's like, "How do you know that that worked? I mean, with all these young kids in the house."
It's a valid question.
It's
It's
a
the same
valid
question I would
question.
have.
And Jim Bob goes, "Oh, he was a changed man."
Sure.
Okay. Meanwhile, Josh gets caught up in the Ashley Madison leak, which we all remember when
Yes.
that happened.
Oh, that was amazing. Oh god.
And then porn star Danica Dillon says she talks about her night with him and says
Right.
it was consensual, but it felt rapey to her.
It was rapey. Yeah, I'm sure. The
Yeah.
thing is, these kids learn nothing about sex and sexuality. They know nothing about sexual health.
Yeah.
I mean, I am by no means going to apologize for Josh Duggar. What he
No.
did was horrible
Yes.
on a million ways. I also think he was created in a world that set him up to be this kind of person,
Yeah.
and forgive him for being this kind of person.
When you make every kid has sexual urges when they're young.
Sure.
Sexual curiosities, sexual urges. When you make those an instrument of the devil, you
Right.
push it into the shadows and it can become appealing to kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or such shame that they
Right.
don't know how to break the shame cycle. Like, it's just,
Right.
it's bad.
And if you're
Okay.
already shamed about sex, then you can fall into even shamier things because it's all bad anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we're going to get into the homeschooling. So
Ugh.
Jim Duggar, listen to me. No. Bill
Jim
Gothard
Bill Gothard.
created the Advanced Training Institute,
Yes, the
ATI.
API.
So he does this in the 80s. It was, I believe, I want to say it was 83
It was
because I
early
remember
80s.
thinking,
It was
okay, I
definitely
was
during the
6.
Reagan administration.
Yeah. So they interview a bunch of kids about this. Oh, it's 1984. I have it here.
Okay.
So no TVs. All they had was a TV in each house that was hooked up to a VCR, which played weird informational videos with old white dudes who taught you like piano.
Oh my god, that video of the guy and the piano,
Yep.
I was like,
I'm so
"Ah!"
glad that we got to play gospel piano today together.
Right,
It's
I'm
like,
like,
okay,
"This
dude.
guy terrifies
I could
me."
be watching MTV.
Right, I
One
was
kid
watching
said,
MTV.
now this one kid said, my parents grew up in backwoods, blah, 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 Arkansas. And he's like, you were either still a steel mill worker or a coal miner.
Yeah, I liked him.
I liked him a lot, but I was like, well, then who like landscapes buildings, hays the field, delivers the mail? Yeah, there are other jobs.
Yeah.
But I get his point. He was being
Yeah, it's the
hyperbolic for a
story of
point. Yeah.
it's the story of Appalachian, it's the story
Yes.
of,
Yes.
the Rust Belt, and
Hmm.
it's very normal.
So he's like, when the chance came up to be a pastor, my dad jumped at it because it
Mhm.
was out of the mines. It was not in the steel mill. So then we learned that homeschooling is a response to Brown versus the Board of Education,
Mhm.
1954. And I just wrote, white people be crazy, yanking their kids out of school at this point.
Heaven forbid.
And
Ugh.
Gothard capitalized on this. And then in 1984, he creates the Advanced Training Institute, a curriculum where he takes like 30 people who are not okay. He did not gather the greatest minds. He did not say,
No.
I need everybody with a PhD. I need everybody who's, done extensive scientific research to come with me to the woods and create the wisdom booklets.
Right. No, no.
He just
No,
grabbed
no.
like his buds. Like, I'm going to
Yep.
take 30 buds. We're going to go into the woods. We're going to write very much like Moses on top of the mountain here, creating this. They're creating the wisdom booklets, and they come back and we learn what is in these wisdom booklets.
Holy cannoli.
First of all, we have footage of Jim Bob saying they debunk evolution. That's not
Yep.
a thing. And Michelle's like taking us for a little tour around the Museum of Creationism.
Right.
And we're seeing like a big flood happened, and that's how the world was created.
Right.
And fossils, did you know fossils were all formed at once in a great flood?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they were, and
Mhm.
dinosaurs were around here about 5,000 years ago.
Yes.
Just
Did you
roaming.
know hands are formed of non-living atoms?
I wanna know what a non-living atom is.
I don't even know what that means. Does that mean my
I
hands are dead?
Right, like, we're flopping our hands. And is it just your hands that are made of non-living atoms? Like, what about my shoulder? Are there non-living atoms there?
I don't know. Do
I
atoms
do
get
they
to your
spread
wrist
up?
and then die? Or they can
Right!
get into your hand? So, rock music, that's satanic.
Nope, can't do that.
And I feel like that made it into the mainstream in the 80s. I remember
Oh, it
that.
certainly
Tipper Gore,
did.
that whole situation.
And that was some of the satanic panic stuff too, like,
Yep.
it all
Yep.
infiltrates.
Xavier Roberts, the creator of Cabbage Patch Kids, was a warlock. And he put
Why
a
are we
devil
so
in
anti?
each Cabbage
That was
Patch
one of
Kid.
the things that made Did you have a Cabbage Patch Kid?
Of course I did.
Of course, mine's name
Valerie
was
Annabelle and Taffy Adaria.
Okay, yeah, I had Caroline Bunny.
Yeah, there you go.
She was great.
Yeah.
Loved her. I liked how, what did one of the girls say? Instead of learning math, we learned slut shaming.
Yeah. Barbie was a slut. They couldn't have Barbies.
Sure.
Forget that. And I just wrote at this point,
Barbie's a hoe on the go.
what are these people so afraid of?
And
What is
that's
going
what
to
it is.
happen to your kid if they have a Cabbage Patch doll?
Right. They're going to become us. I'm sure they
Because-
think we're terrible.
Because on some level, you have to believe that these people did not really believe that Xavier Roberts was a warlock. Did they?
I think they did.
I don't
really
even know
do.
what that is
I don't
like.
I don't know how to wrap my head around that.
Me either.
I
So now
yeah.
we have, get ready, guys. Get away from anything breakable right now, because now we have the worst part ever.
Maybe you and I need to go to a rage room after watching this.
Jesus Christ. Amanda, what is wrong with the way people dress? It's men have eye problems.
Eye traps.
Yes. So the solution to help the men with their eye problem is to avoid eye traps.
Right.
So the shorter the skirt, the more vicious the trap. I wanted to
That's right.
punch this woman in the face, and I'm not a violent person in any stretch of the imagination.
Same, but I wanted to. This is so appalling to me. The kids wore pantaloons underneath their thing. Now, I remember, and I'm sure your girls did it. I'm sure you did it too. There would be days where we would wear like the equivalent of bike shorts underneath the skirt so we could climb a tree.
No, I mostly did that so my fat thighs won't rub together.
Well, that's
Yeah.
actually that became the real reason.
Let's talk real for a
But
minute.
yeah, but these girls all had to wear under their, like, ankle length
Yep.
skirts. You
Yep.
showed I love the fact that they would show different outfits and the girls had to draw on it what were the eye traps.
Yeah, so in the wisdom booklet, guys,
This is their school.
there's a
This is
woman,
school.
there's pictures of women wearing different outfits, and you had to circle the eye trap. Is it the lace? Is it the slit in the
Cleavage.
skirt? Is it the
Right.
cleavage? So the one girl said instead of learning math, we were learning slut shaming,
Slut
like you
shaming.
said. Yeah. So
It's appalling.
all right, now we get to this idea of getting the children in line. So everybody keeps saying like former IBLP people who are speaking out now say when I looked at the Duggars, what I
Mhm.
noticed is that these children were like soldiers. They
Yep.
didn't say anything, they didn't talk out loud, they didn't laugh, they didn't enjoy life. They just were broken, pretty much.
But that's not how they describe it. They were like, they were just so well behaved and they were so
Right.
good.
But
Like,
they
you and I look at that and go, oh my
saw
God,
the
these children are
brokenness.
broken.
Yeah.
Right. But they wanted more of their brokenness. So I listened to that interview with Tia Levings, and she talks about this. So she grew up, she was the strawberry blonde that we saw in the documentary.
Was she the
a
one
woman
whose
of about
husband
our
abused
age.
her?
Yes.
Okay, she was very powerful.
She's amazing.
Mhm.
She wrote a book that's coming out next year that I very much want to read.
Mm-hmm.
But she talks about, so she grew up Southern Baptist, but then
Right.
her family fell more into this. She kind of grew up not in this world.
Mm-hmm.
She was not in this world till she was about 9, and then her family wound up in it. But she wound up talking to these other mothers at her church, and she called them the organ pipe families. Because, if you see an organ pipe, it like goes gently down from the tallest pipe to the shortest
Yeah.
pipe. And it's always like this
Yep.
gradual, pretty, it's usually,
Yep.
I mean, pipe organs are gorgeous. And so to see that thing, she's like, that's what you would see sitting in rows. We call them the organ pipe.
Yeah.
Or the pipe organ families.
Yeah.
So the dad, the mom, and then just all the kids in
Mhm.
perfect alignment. And so she started asking those mothers, what did they do? And that's what a lot of these people did, is they just saw these kids behaving really well, what they described as really well, what you and I look at and go, what is wrong with these children? Because
Yeah.
this is not how healthy children behave.
Yeah.
And they wanted that. And I kind of get it. If you have 19 children in your house,
You need them to be
getting
soldiers.
be quiet.
Mhm.
I can't imagine how loud that house would be if
Yeah.
they were not broken children.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough to watch. Like you look
It
at their
is.
faces in the footage and they just look
They're blank.
they're blank. They're blank.
So do we want to talk about the child training
Yeah.
piece now?
So
Okay.
these
Oh,
children
God.
were talking about like at one point one of them said, I was terrified of like I would have nightmares of burning alive.
Mhm.
And they were saying like for them, hell was not an abstract concept.
Oh, no,
Like,
it was happening right here, right now.
They had a very distinct knowledge of what hell was like and that they were going to go
Mhm.
there if they
Yep.
sinned. So we see pastors encouraging people to spank their kids. There is this super creepy footage of this old guy calling this poor kid Jason up on stage,
Yes.
showing how to spank him and then making this kid hug him.
Hug him.
And when he didn't hug him enough, he spanked
He'd
him
hug
again.
him. Right. And then had to hug him more. Were you spanked as a child?
I don't know if I was officially like spanked, but I was hit here and there.
Okay. I was spanked a couple of times.
Yeah.
Actually, my dad did it, and I've
My
talked to
dad
him
did
about
too.
it.
Mhm.
And it got to the point where all my dad had to do was look at me with this finger and go, "Come here."
Yeah.
And that got me into line real quick because I
Yeah.
didn't want to be spanked. And I remember asking him, I'm like, so let's talk about the spanking thing as an adult. He's like, I hate that I did that.
Yeah.
But that's what we thought we had to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how hard did you hit me? Because I was just curious. So
Mhm.
he's like, give me your hand. And like, I'll put it next to the microphone so you can kind of hear it. It's like, he's like,
Yeah.
I barely tapped you.
Yeah. It was just the whole
It was the whole ritual of
the
it.
whole ritual of it. Exactly.
And really, it was just stopping it. And there's a million ways to do this now. It's redirecting a kid into something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really what it was in my household.
No,
It was just a way for him to redirect.
My dad would Charlie horse us. Like,
What is that?
Okay, so the biggest problem my parents had with us disciplinarily as young children was
Mhm.
that we shared a room and we shared a bed. and we would
Okay.
never go to bed because we'd always be
Okay.
playing. Okay, so
Sure.
he would be yelling at us all night to get to sleep.
Mhm.
So he would come in and he would Charlie horse us, which is like a punch to the thigh.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yes. And it was like, and I tell people that, and they're like, "Oh my God."
Their response is the one I just had, which is,
Yeah.
"Oh my god."
Yeah. And I don't necessarily remember it like super hurting or being traumatic,
Right.
but I don't know. Or like if my dad had this thing, like if we were chewing with our mouth open, oh my God, he hated it so much. He would
Mhm.
like give us a slap up the back of the head if you want. And if
Yeah,
you
it's
knew my
stuff.
dad today, he's the most chill guy on earth. I don't know.
Yeah.
But don't
My dad
forget,
is a super gentle man. He
my
would never.
my parents were super young when they had us. My dad
Yeah,
was 19, my mom was 17. They were the
like the
Duggars.
Duggars. Yeah.
And they just didn't know. Like my dad was physically abused by his father essentially. So like
Okay.
because he was a lighter version of that, he thought
He
that
was
was
great.
better. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the 70s. Like,
It was the
the stuff we're
70s.
describing was very
Mhm.
normal for the
Yep.
70s.
But these kids, like, they were beaten. So they
Oh,
talk
yeah, they were
about the
beaten
rod of reproof. And so they talk about, how you could beat a kid with a switch
with a switch
and
and the glue sticks.
the glue sticks. Now, that's something that I've heard in another documentary, and I can't remember where.
You heard it in The Way Down
Thank you.
with Glenn or
Yes.
Gwen Chamblin,
Yes, thank
and
you.
they did that in her church
How
as
to beat
well.
your kids without leaving a mark. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
And they would get, so I think you and I probably have had a hot glue gun where the glue stick is maybe 3 or 4 inches. Well, you
Yeah.
can also get like industrial length ones that are like a foot long.
Yeah.
And they can act as a switch because they have some bend to them, and they didn't like to use tree limbs because they would dry out.
Boy, whoever would have known when they were inventing the industrial length glue stick that would be
That it would
used to
become
traumatize generations of
right.
children.
Exactly.
So the Duggars, they ask Amy, the cousin, like, have you ever seen your cousins get hit or beaten? And she
Mhm.
starts to like tear up and gets very emotional and says, yeah, she said they called it the room of encouragement. Do you need some encouragement? And then they would beat
Mhm.
them. So then there's this thing called blanket training where they put a kid
Oh
on a
god.
blanket, a baby, like 6
A
months old,
baby.
on a blanket.
Yes.
Now, my
Yes.
kids had blanket time, was very different.
That's tummy time. So
Yes.
they start,
Yeah.
engaging their core and their neck muscles.
Yeah. So they would put them on the blanket. They would put objects off to the side. I know you guys saw the documentary. I'm not going to repeat everything, and then they would hit them as they tried to touch
If they
these
went to go
things.
for it.
Yeah.
Their goal was to break the will of children as soon as possible.
Yeah. Yep.
That's it. It was just to break their will so that they would be more compliant.
So one girl says, and I can't remember who it was, and I'm sorry I'm doing that, like one guy and one girl. I just got, I can't write down
Yeah.
everybody's name.
There's a lot of people.
She said, by doing this to young children, they're setting you up to become victims and to be groomed by adults.
Yeah.
And she's 100% correct. When
Yeah.
you grow
All
up,
these kids knew
when you grow
is
up
this world.
knowing you cannot question authority, that
Mhm.
is how you let a coach molest you. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Or a priest or a teacher, because you think they are an authority figure and you have to do what they say. Like you don't
Yeah.
learn to question anything.
And we'll
that's
talk about
scary.
once the abuse allegations against Bill
Mhm.
Gothard come out, because of course
Mhm.
those exist, how they tried to solve that.
Yeah. One dude had a good comment. He said, Gothard turned every father into a cult leader and every home into an island. I thought that was really chilling. Okay.
And it's, again, these closed patriarchal societies.
Yeah. And the women, the fathers were doing a lot of this work, but the women were helping them cover it up. Like,
Oh, for
they're
sure.
just as complicit.
They're complicit, yeah.
Yep. So Josh and Anna. Oh, and I wanted to make another note here. We hear from a lot of these former IBLP students that like their moms knew about the abuse or whatever when we get into the sexual
Mhm.
assault. The church, quote, I'm really saying the men in the church,
Right.
really talked these mothers into staying.
Yeah.
And into being in this community. So even if your mother was like, I hear you, like even if Michelle Duggar, let's say, wanted to leave because her
She
daughters were
can't.
she can't leave.
They have no education.
Nope.
They don't know anything else out in the real
And
world.
you have a whole group of people you trust saying, we'll help you get through this. We'll
Yep.
help you fix this. This is normal. It's okay. I could
It's for
see,
your own
yeah,
good.
I could see like being, you know, a single mom or whatever, because we do get into that later, and just being like, okay, all right, like I
Yeah.
need help. So, okay. So now Josh and Anna. Anna is his wife, 2006. She was 17, he was 18. I want to go back for 1 second to our friends, the Holtz, who were
Nine
14
and
and 19.
19.
And Jim Holt says the creepiest thing of, well, she was developed, so she was mature.
Right.
Okay. Okay, dude,
And I
tell
didn't know
yourself
how,
that.
but he goes, "We didn't know how old." I mean, I didn't know how old she was. She knew how old she was.
Mm-hmm. I love that she said that too. Because she could have
Yeah.
lied. She could have just said, and I was younger.
Yeah. Nope. 14 and 19.
Yep.
And then he's like, "Well, we're from Arkansas. We marry young." No,
Ooh.
we're cousins.
Ooh. He's a douchebag.
He's
Okay.
such a creeper.
So Anna's 17, Josh is 18. Everybody needs a chaperone to keep the purity culture intact.
Right.
All right.
You never kiss
You
before
save your
marriage.
kissing, you save everything else for the wedding. Jim Bob gives, we see this scene where Jim Bob gives Josh some creepy magical wedding night DVD or something.
Right.
At this point, now that's on TV and that's performative, because at this point,
Sure.
Josh has already molested his sisters. Josh
Right.
knows about
Yes.
sex.
Yes, he does.
So the man becomes the authority over the woman at the wedding. Now, Tia talks about her wedding and how
Mhm.
she met the guy she had to marry, and she said she was raped 3 times on her wedding night.
Yep.
And then she
But
found
she
out
didn't
she
know
was
that was rape.
right, and then she found out she was pregnant. Her husband was abusive. He beat her the entire time that she had 5 children. And she said, "My husband even used to spank me."
Mhm. He
Oh.
beat the hell out of her.
Mhm.
And listening to her talk about, like, she meets him, they'd been dating for less than a month, they get engaged because
Mhm.
that's what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
And she said, "I graduated." She's like, and I don't mean high school. I graduated from high school. I graduated to become an 18-year-old pure virgin, which was the goal. I
Yeah.
did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah,
And she
100%.
meets this guy. He they're at a party at, like, the beach. He takes her onto a pier. He beats her up and leaves her, and she doesn't even know how to find him, and she comes back, and he, like, pulls up the car, and he's like, "Get in," and then he assaults her, as she said, 3 times in the bushes before she came back into the house, and even now, even though she's so strong and so honest about what happened, she's like, "I mean, there wasn't any penetration, so but he
Yeah.
did sexually assault me," and it's like, even
That's a
you
trauma
could just
response.
it's a trauma
Mhm.
response. It's
Cuz
so
sometimes the
heartbreaking.
narrative is the truth, and the narrative is so traumatic
Yeah,
that
you downplay it.
you have to downplay it. You absolutely have to. That's very common. She says the whole point is to inflict pain on women and children until you have submissive confession.
Yep, that's
And
it.
then she says, and this is a good point. She goes, think about the audacity of Jim Bob to think that he could have his life filmed for how long and to keep
And
all of these
knows that his
children under
child
control. Mm-hmm.
and knew that his child molested somebody. One of those kids, statistically speaking, is almost certainly queer,
Oh, yeah.
statistically speaking.
Yes, yes. Imagine how that person feels.
Right.
I can't get into that. Okay. So then we
Yeah.
have Chad Gallagher enters. He's the PR man, and it was his idea to send Jill and Jenna onto the Megyn Kelly show and downplay the abuse. Jill
Freaking
says now
sacrificial
she
lambs.
regrets it. And Jill's husband is like, it was a suicide mission, and Jim Bob told us we needed to get the show back on track.
Yeah. Because that's how we get the Jill and Jessa counting on show, because they couldn't have the Duggars anymore, because now Duggar Kid 1
Mm-hmm.
is a known
Mm-hmm.
molester
Mm-hmm.
and Ashley Madison kid.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus
Cousin
Christ.
Amy tells us actually Jill totally lied in that interview, which again, I don't blame her for that at all.
No. Nope.
Because she actually had hit Josh and pushed him and fought back with him
Mhm.
when the assault
So
was happening.
he wasn't they weren't asleep. They
No,
knew what
no,
happened to
they
them.
knew what happened. So TLC canceled the show anyway,
Yep.
and they decided to make a show called Jill and Jessa Counting On. So these are the
Ugh.
stories of the 2 oldest girls, I guess.
Yep. So we get their weddings and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
births and all that.
Now that takes us into episode 3, where the family now uses Jess and Jill's spinoff to give the family a voice to talk about Josh and defend him, which
Mhm.
is gross.
It's
Hmm.
gross.
The theme of this episode is kind of the power of Jim Bob. So, how far is his reach? How does
Mhm.
he, control his family? So, we see this like lighthearted moment where they laugh and say that he made the girls' suitors fill out actual applications. And
Right.
he arranged Jill and Derek's marriage, essentially.
Yeah, none of these kids can date. They
Mm-mm.
court with the
Mm-hmm.
goal of
Mm-hmm.
marriage, which we've learned
Which we
about
see
courting
on
from the
Sister Wives.
Plaths and Sister Wives and the
Mm-hmm.
Plaths and all
Mm-hmm.
these fundamentalist groups.
Yep.
Um, and Tia talks about it. She's like, the man, first of all, women have no agency, no
No,
autonomy,
no.
no decision making. She goes, you could ask a 30-year-old IBLP raised woman what they want for dinner, and they cannot answer you because they have never made a single decision in their life.
Yeah, and
They
they
will
probably
look
have
at
to
their
look
husband
to
and
their
go, what
husband.
do I want
Yeah.
for dinner?
Yep.
They can't even tell you if they're thirsty.
And I
It's
and I
nuts.
just have to say something. I think a lot of women vote this way.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, who should I
Yeah,
vote for? Tell me who I should vote for.
exactly.
I know
And
people like that.
I do
And it's
too.
like, what?
And
No, no. Vote for who you want to vote for, even if it's a terrible choice. Just it has to
right,
be your choice.
right. No,
Yeah.
but these women don't have agency and autonomy.
Mm-mm.
And she talks about how she found her husband because he chose her.
Mm-hmm.
And he chose her because, as she said, I was red haired, I was fair skinned, I had big boobs. He thought I was hot. And as soon as he decided I would be his wife, that was it.
Wow.
That was the decision.
Okay, so we see Jill kind of pushing back against Jim Bob at this point. Okay,
Hmm.
she's first of all, none of these children got a dime of this money.
Right.
So they were on television for 8 years, not a
They never
dime,
saw a penny.
not a dime. Jill says when she didn't want her no, the wedding was okay. Okay, so she didn't want her birth filmed, but
Exactly,
her wedding
because
was filmed.
Anna and Josh's birth had or Anna
Yes,
Duggar's baby had
yes.
been filmed, given birth in the bathroom, and she didn't want that.
So Jill and Jess had totally could have went on Extreme Sisters and had their baby in a swimming pool,
Oh,
but
they
whatever.
sure should have.
So it's the chaos of Jill's wedding, and Jim Bob slips her a contract, doesn't explain what it is, and just has her sign it, and it's like a
Yeah.
commitment to a few more years of this show.
10 more years of the show.
Oh God. No, it was a 5-year contract.
Oh, I thought it was 10.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah, it could be a 2-year contract.
Right.
So the show wanted to film the birth of her baby. She said no, but they made her do it anyway. But they let Derek and Jill film it on handy
Mhm.
cams.
Thank
Current
God.
references only. TLC was paying the family, but not them. Jill says she never received any money. 2016, Jill and Derek are living in El Salvador doing mission work, like actual Christians.
Yeah.
And TLC wanted Derek and Jill to come back and film, and they said no. And Jill says it was the first time we ever said no. So then Jim Bob decides he's going to offer everybody $10 an hour.
$10 an hour.
$10
You
an
can
hour,
make
guys.
more working at McDonald's.
Jim Bob said he would pay the older kids minimum wage in a lump sum if they would agree to be part of his production company forever.
Mhm.
God.
And the thing is, okay, they had the show for 8 years. I mean, these kids had to have been filming for thousands of hours because they even talk about it. And it's the thing we know to be true. Like they walking through the door, you may have to do it 40 times till they get the take right. Like we know this is happening. We talk about it on
Yep.
on 90 Day all the time. This is a recreation of a conversation that may or may not have happened, whatever it is. We get that. Reality
We get
TV is
it.
not reality.
Yeah.
That's fine. But let's say just one of these kids worked 5,000 hours over those 8 years.
Yeah.
He's not giving them
No.
$50,000.
No.
All 19 of them. And
No.
also, $50,000 is nothing compared to how much money they made.
Did you just do that math in your head? 5,000 times 10 that quickly?
I added a 0. That's why I chose numbers that were
Look
really
at
easy.
You.
I know. Don't ask me to do anything more complex than that, but
That
I
was
can add a
complex
0.
for me. Okay.
That's hard. Let's go shopping.
Now we're going into the training centers. So IBLP decides to open these training centers for kids that are terrifying and look a lot like militia camps, in my opinion.
They do. They are militia camps.
So lots of parents decide to send their kids there instead of college. There was like Constitution, like just stupid camps where you would learn
Right.
about American history, which was probably all wrong. You would learn
Right.
about love in one of them. But the one that was terrifying was like God's mission or whatever. And they were all dressed like soldiers. It was really scary.
Yes. They were trying to build the Christian army
Hmm. But
to
what
take over the country.
but what they were really doing was doing manual labor for Bill
Yeah.
Gothard.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. For no money.
So he has them at these training centers and they're like building them. They're
Right.
like pushing wheelbarrows of dirt and pouring concrete, and it's wild. So some of them are like Alert. This one that's called Alert is
Mhm.
paramilitary.
Yeah.
Like it's right out there.
It looked no different than the videos you see of, like, army training camp
Like
or
Hitler
army
Youth.
boot camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hitler
Yeah.
I was going with the nicer analogy of, like, boot camp, but yes, like Hitler Youth too. It's
Look
all the
up
same
some
thing.
Hitler Youth stuff. I mean, this is what he did. So
Yep.
Heather says she bought tampons at one point and
Oh, yeah.
they made them return them because they were pleasureful and you were depriving your husband of breaking your hymen. Oh.
Right, and then put her in a prayer room for
Mhm,
4
mhm.
days.
Everything centered around shame,
Yes,
especially for women, around a woman's body.
and by the way, there ain't nothing pleasurable about a tampon.
No, gross.
Disgusting.
Only a fucking guy would think that
Would
way.
think that this is
Uh-huh.
pleasurable. Yeah,
So Bill Gothard was super fucking rich, even though he pretended not to be.
right.
And then we see at the center, now he's starting to get into politics. And Mike
Mhm.
Huckabee's fingerprints are all over this shit.
Oh, for
And the
sure.
kids are doing campaign work for Mike Huckabee, Sarah Palin, Rick Perry. And
Yeah.
then guess who's the biggest donor to IBLP?
Hobby Lobby.
David Green from Hobby Lobby. This is why we hate Hobby Lobby, just
Yeah.
because he's got his fingers in a bunch of shit.
Yeah. One thing we didn't say, just that we forgot to mention early on, Jim Bob was a state senator and
Oh,
had tried to run for
yes.
Senate,
Yes.
lost. He then runs later as well.
Yes.
But
And Josh Duggar was positioned to go into
to run.
politics. So
Good Lord.
Gothard starts a movement teaching Bible and shit in the schools and in prisons. And I just wrote, oh my God, they're spreading into the military and the police. They were doing these workshops
Yeah.
for military.
Yeah.
And it was called Character First. Whatever. Like the audacity of this guy.
I know.
I can't
to
even
think.
All right. So the oldest male present in the centers was in charge, period.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, girls were just molested and raped all the time in
Right and
these
left.
centers. Yep. Because that's what happened when you
Same.
put a bunch of teenage boys in charge of girls.
That's
You're
right.
going to have one or two bad apples who are going to take advantage of that.
That's right.
All right. So now we get into Bill Gothard and his gross brother, Steve. So Steve was a real problem in the 80s, and this
Yeah.
came out back then. So he shifted his brother to the Northwoods Conference Center in the Upper Peninsula. And girls who disobeyed Bill were sent to be, quote, terrorized by Steve.
Yes. Bill Gothard also, as we'll talk about, was molesting young women. But Steve was way worse.
Steve was
Like,
worse.
Bill was bad. Steve was way worse.
Yes.
So we're going to send the kids there.
And Bill's solution to break Steve of this is to have him get married. I'm just going to marry one of these girls.
Right.
Her
That'll
life will
fix
be
it.
awesome. You
Yeah.
know what it reminds me of? When they were trying to marry Joffrey off in Game of Thrones. And they were going to marry to, what's her name?
Oh,
Stark.
Sansa.
Sansa, thank you.
Yeah.
And you were just like, no, don't marry him. like who are we gonna marry the monster to?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, God. Yeah.
So he gets rid of Steve because even the board is like, no, dude, you're not marrying this guy off to one of these girls. So he gets rid of Steve and he institutes Matthew 18, which makes it impermissible to gossip, which means you can't make allegations against leaders.
That's right.
Mhm.
And they even show the video of I think it is Jill. It's one of the Duggar girls. It's Jill or Jessa talking about how you don't talk about a problem you have with somebody. You go and talk to them privately. You can talk about good things about people publicly, but bad things you keep private.
Yeah, I'm going to go talk to my rapist about the rape.
Right. Please don't do that again, sir.
Yeah.
Like,
it's bad. So now we meet Emily Anderson. She was only 10 when her father sexually abused her. She says, "Yes, my mother knew about the abuse, but my mother was in a cult too."
Mhm.
And we get the journey of
I loved her.
how she was moved to headquarters, and I guess when you were in headquarters, that was a big deal.
Yeah, you
And
wanted to be there, and Bill Gothard had a very specific type of girl, and he would
yes,
choose
yes,
the wounded birds, is
yes.
how Tia describes it.
Yep.
He chose the wounded birds, and Emily was a wounded bird after
Mhm.
being molested by her father.
Yes, 100%.
100%.
So we see Emily's trajectory, like she goes from, this broken home to being in headquarters to one night Bill taking her upstairs, which we can assume he was going to assault her. And
Mhm,
she
and
said the
thank
entire
God someone
place,
was in the room.
yeah, she said the entire place was empty. And then thank God somebody was there. So it
Yeah.
didn't happen. All right. Now we see Journey to the Heart, which is a 10-day workshop where you get an individual meeting with Gothard. And Derek says, "I felt like this was a vetting process for Gothard. Like he
Mhm.
is a type. And once he liked you, you were chosen to work at headquarters." So
Yep,
this is a man who was never married, never had kids, and just had all of these girls that he could do
yep.
whatever he wanted with.
Yes, and apparently one thing that he did that I learned from Tia is his he was into feet.
Oh,
Whatever,
okay. That's
I don't
fine.
care what
Yeah.
people are into. If that's your thing, go
Fly
for it.
your freak flag.
Fly your freak flag, just don't, assault people with your freak flag.
Right.
He was into feet, and so he would, you know, stroke young women's feet,
Mm,
but he would say that wasn't a sexual way of touching people
right.
because it's your feet.
Right.
But he was getting off
It
on
was
the feet.
sexual for him. Yeah.
Like, people would see him sitting there with, like, a full-on erection.
Uh,
Gross.
who described him? Was it Tia who described him as having a Lego shaped head and an ill fitting
Yes.
men's warehouse suit?
Yes, and that's exactly what it is.
So then we see Wisdom Book 36. If a woman, Jill tells us this, if a woman is sexually assaulted and doesn't cry out to God while it's happening,
Then it's
she's
not assault.
essentially to blame.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. Good
Um,
God.
I wrote, "Oh my God, idiot Michelle Duggar is saying she was a cheerleader and used to wear short skirts and she had no idea how defrauding that was." So
Right.
defrauding is when you tempt, it's basically blue balls, when you tempt a
Yeah.
man, but you can't carry through.
Right, without damaging your own, purity.
Every
Defrauding.
everything, a woman's existence revolved around
Defrauds men.
not tempting a man. And you were just
Yes.
this, you were set up as this just temptress. You know what I mean? It was so
And
weird.
it's the same reason that we have this bullshit even now of, like, dress codes for girls in school.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid you wear, like, a tank top because boys can't concentrate. Oh, how
Yeah.
about we teach boys to, like, get it together?
Yeah. I'm gonna start saying eye traps, I think.
Eye traps. You start going with your girls as they're leaving the house.
Mhm, mhm.
It's an eye trap, darling. You cannot
I
leave the
feel
house in
like
that.
Bradley Cooper is an eye trap for me. Mhm.
Bradley Cooper's an eye trap for me too. I should have been married to him. I almost went to high school with
Mm,
him.
mm. That was a
I
missed
almost went
opportunity. No offense to
It
Todd.
really
We love
was.
Todd, but that was a
We
missed
love Todd.
opportunity.
Well, more than that, I tell my best friend Wendy, who I met in ninth grade, I'm like, "I could have had Bradley Cooper, but I got you. So you better keep
Mm,
showing up, girl, because I
true.
took one for the
It's
team."
true. So now we see the downfall. So there's this
Yeah.
website called Recovering Grace, and survivors start sharing their stories. Now, I want to say this is the double-edged sword of social media, right?
Yes.
Because they say, like, one person says the Duggars and Bill Gothard have used, now they're using social media. We see Christian influencers and all of this
Yep.
to get their message out. However, we also have all of these survivors
Yeah.
using it to get their message out. And, without that spotlight, we would never have known that this was
No.
happening.
Tia says with 100% conviction, social media saved her life
Yes.
because she was able to connect with other women who
Mhm.
had left.
Mhm.
And she then had a roadmap of how you leave. Because
Mhm.
what happens is they isolate these people, these particularly women,
Mhm.
so they don't know that when they leave, they will have a safety net.
Yeah.
Tia's like, I left and I had a safety net of women who had all left before me.
Yeah.
And now I get to be the safety net for other women as they leave and help them through this. She's like, social media saved me and my children.
This is the good of social media.
It
I
is
mean,
the connection of social
you
media.
have to take the bad with the good. And you
Mhm.
just have to hope that when people hear these Christian influencers talking about how, women are eye traps. You just have to hope that people don't believe that. I mean, I
Yep.
know there are plenty who will, but
Yep.
there are way more that won't.
Exactly.
But there
And
are.
thank God it helps women and children who are trapped in these systems see that there is something else.
Yeah, exactly.
As Tia says, the sound of the of the modem, she's like, that sound became freedom to me.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually these allegations start to pile up. They finally decide to do something about it because, of course, IBLP is worth $90 million. Of course.
Of course it is.
Because they probably pay zero taxes.
Because it's a church.
So they even have to physically escort Bill Gothard from a stage in 2018, which I needed to see better and clearer footage of that.
Yeah, than just like a grainy video of the building. I'm like, I want to see him being hauled out by his belt.
Yeah,
and shoved out the door.
I need to see that.
Yeah.
So, episode 4, Arrows activated. And at the end of 3, they give you this impression, they never really go further on this, but they give you the impression that in the vacuum created by Bill Gothard's arrest, that Jim Bob and Michelle are now the heads of IBLP. That's not official.
It's not official, but they are certainly the public face of it.
Yeah, yep.
For sure.
So Josh Duggar is now arrested for child pornography. And the images were real bad. Like infants. Okay? Now, I want to say something. This is where I'm going to get political. So if you don't want to hear it, fast forward.
Yeah.
We see footage of Jim Bob saying the libtards and the liberals have done this. They have somehow manifested child pornography onto Josh Duggar's computer. And that's what pisses me off. Like, you can't, like, this conspiracy mindset. And he's like,
that everyone's out to get them.
He's like, it's an Obama judge. If Trump were still in office, this wouldn't be happening. So are you saying that Trump harbors pedophiles?
Yeah. Well,
like, right. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Like, because the system's not corrupt enough for you? That's because
it's not corrupt.
Working?
It's not corrupt in the way that will benefit you.
Yeah. Yep.
It's corrupt in the way that's out to get you. If it was corrupt in the way to benefit him, he's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
No harm, no foul. Great.
Now, Amanda, we need to talk about Covenant Eyes.
Oh, God. That video was something else.
Guys, I put the video in the Facebook group. If you're not in there and you don't see this video, you need to look this shit up.
You should just put it in the show notes. It needs to be seen.
It's amazing. Covenant Eyes is a program, okay, that is hawked by some dollar store Tom Cruise, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he is like, porn is my weakness. It's like a superhero thing.
Yes.
Excuse me. And so what this does is it tracks your usage on the computer.
Yeah.
And when it detects that you are looking at porn, so Amanda would be my reliability buddy, okay?
Yes, because you sign up with somebody.
So I'm surfing porn on my computer, blah, blah, blah. Amanda gets
a notification.
Fucking report and notification. Uh-oh, Amy's looking at the porn again.
Amy's on the porn again.
So Amanda has to call me up and be like, do you need
Amy, get off the porn. Get off the porn. So, this is evidence report. Jasmine needs this. This is evidence report.
Yes. So Josh Duggar has
this on his computer.
But he also separates he partitions his hard drive into 2 parts. So that the other part doesn't report.
Right. So he can look at all the nastiness. Mm-hmm. Yes. And they're like, he was always the most tech savvy of the kids.
Yeah. That's what he did, right? He created a partition on his hard drive.
He created a partition. So it's a dual boot computer. And only one side had Covenant Eyes.
So he's arrested. He goes on trial. The Holts testify against him. Jim Bob testified that he didn't remember anything.
Right.
Meanwhile, he has the audacity to run for a Senate seat in Arkansas.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Who the hell runs for Senate while
his son is being investigated for infant porn?
child pornography. Like, oh god, I can't imagine.
Then he has the audacity to send Jim Holt a fundraising email. He just
Right.
testified against him.
Right.
This is
See, the
some.
Holts
I
try to
don't
hold
know.
themselves out as good people. I don't think they are. I
No,
mean, they eventually
no,
did the right
no.
thing, but they're not good
I
people
don't know
in
if
my
you're
mind.
watching Love and Death, but he
Yes.
has some real Candy Montgomery vibes. Like
He
Candy
does.
Montgomery's just like the audacity
Whatever.
of that woman. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
you
and the
could you
audacity of
could
Jim Bob.
you could still have Betty Gore's son or daughter sleep over. Sure, you're best friends. I just murdered
Sure.
her with an axe, but okay.
Fine, but yeah, but their kid
hmm
can stay over. It's
And
cool, cool, cool.
this is kind of where we're getting into the end of it and starting to turn political because we hear about the Joshua generation. And that is
Mhm.
this generation of young men, mostly men, being raised
Yep.
in this. And we hear from Alex Harris. He's their former leader. And he says they're building, get ready, an elite force of Christian homeschool graduates to infiltrate the highest levels of government. He was a
Yes.
Harvard Law School grad who clerked for Supreme Court Kennedy. And these kids were to become U.S. Supreme Court justices to bring America back to being a Christian nation.
Anybody I'm not going to jump on either side of the political bandwagon, but I do want to say this. I have a degree in political science. I have some knowledge of this.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change the course of the United States, it doesn't matter who's president, it doesn't matter who's the senator or the
Do it through
representative.
the
It's
courts.
all about the Supreme Court. It's all about the
Mm-hmm.
courts in general, but
Yeah.
it's all about the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And these guys have seen this well ahead of
Yep.
the left seeing this and
Yep.
understanding this.
Yep.
And I mean, the course that our country is going to be on for a long time was radically changed by the appointees that Donald Trump made to the Supreme Court. Whether you like him or not, I'm not even going to say.
The woman that he helped me.
Amy Barrett
Thank you.
Coney.
She was in a weird religion like this.
Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was in a weird cult like this.
Yes. Yes.
She's one of them.
She is one of them.
Yeah. On the
As
Supreme Court.
is
On the Supreme
on the
Court.
Supreme Court. As is, I mentioned Madison Cawthorn.
Mhm.
They talk about Patrick Henry University.
Yeah, I wrote it's
So
terrible.
I looked that up. Oh,
That's
it's a pretty low level.
That's my deep dive into this. Patrick Henry College is terrible. Madison
Yeah.
Cawthorn is fucking gross. That's why I've written
He
down.
is.
Mhm.
Yeah, he is. He was a trip.
He
was-
not just for his politics, he was accused credibly of abusing people.
He was kicked out of Patrick Henry for sexual assault
Mhm.
allegations,
Mhm.
then goes to the House of Representatives, eventually gets himself the boot for sexual assault allegations.
Mhm.
Never mind, he was probably a drag queen. Like, all sorts of stuff that I have no problem with. You be who you want to be,
Yeah,
but it's the
yeah.
hypocrisy of it.
Yes.
It's the hypocrisy that pisses me
Mhm.
off.
Me too. Me too. Roe v. Wade is overturned. We see that
course.
we have to relive this nightmare.
Yep.
Um,
Which is always the goal. Because
Yeah.
the goal is not about it's not about saving babies. We've known that for a long time. It's about controlling women, and it's also about creating more white Christian babies.
yeah. I don't
It's not
even know if
saving
it's about
babies.
that. I think it's about
It
winning
is.
elections.
It
Period.
it's about that too, but it's about creating an army of these white Christian babies that will become white Christian adults so we can take over.
It's the most, how do I say this? They really use it as a cudgel. Like they just,
Mhm.
it's so, you can really make it an emotional issue. They're killing babies. That's what you can say.
Yep.
People are going to vote for that. People are going to
No one
come out and
wants-
vote.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Now they're trying to figure out, okay, so that's gone. Now they're trying to figure out what is the next issue that we can scare people with. And this is where trans people are coming in.
Trans people and drag queens.
Yep. They're going to harm your children. They're going to go into a bathroom and abuse a child. That's not going to happen. I mean, could it happen? Sure. But it is way
it
more
happens all the
likely
time.
that a straight white man is going
He's
to
going to
abuse
beat the
your
hell out of a
child.
trans
Right.
person.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's so ridiculous. Anyway, okay,
is.
I'm not going down that road. But I will say this. We have Christian influencers like Paula Morgan who met
Oh my
on
God,
Tinder.
they were ridiculous.
And they're trying to make Christianity cool again. She doesn't wear pants. She's submissive. And they're just repeating Bill Gothard's horrible, horrible ideas.
And they're both very conventionally attractive. Their
Mhm.
home looks nice.
Mhm.
They look like they're having fun. I mean,
Mhm.
they're in a lot of ways the perfect poster child for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they don't look scary.
Right. And I want to go back and clarify something. When I say a white man is more likely to abuse your child, I'm saying a white man because look at this ministry.
Yeah.
There's no people of color in this ministry.
No, no,
Very, very
no.
few. I'm not saying people of color don't commit crimes. I'm just
Right. In
specifically
this
talking
world,
about this ministry, which is
this ministry is a very white,
very white.
male
Yeah.
dominated.
Yeah.
Very
I
white,
don't want
and
to
obviously
feel
male
like I'm
dominated.
picking on white people. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. Okay.
Yes.
So a bunch of women come together and they decide to sue IBLP in
Mm-hmm.
Gothard. They knew what was happening, they covered it up, but
Yep.
the statute of limitations was up, so it was dismissed. The motherfucker countersues these women for
Yep. For libel.
$18,000 a piece. Yep. And he loses that case. The
Thank
judge
God.
hears them out, they have their day in court, he loses. Josh Duggar is found guilty, 12 years in prison. Good. Goodbye.
Right. But Anna's sticking by him.
Anna's sticking by him.
She doesn't know anything else.
Okay.
She's as indoctrinated in the cult as the rest of them.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah. ATI doesn't exist anymore. The Advanced Training Institute,
Right.
the wisdom booklets, they're gone.
You can now buy them. I was
so
almost
tempted. I was so
tempted to, but I'm like, I'm not giving those people
I
a
can't
penny
give
of
them
my
a
money.
dime. And the survivors talk about what havoc this has wreaked on their life. And then they talk about this period of deconstruction where they start to question everything they were taught and break that down. And in the end, the former members are using their voices, which they say is what the church feared the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say something too. This is where this whole argument comes about churches having tax-free status, because you can't say that they are not influencing politics.
Yeah.
Like the idea behind churches receiving the benefit of a tax-free existence,
That they stay out of government.
yeah, is that, we don't tax your beliefs about religion and separation of church and state, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
They're not separate. They're
Nope.
not separate. And
Not in the least.
it's these, when you have a leader like Bill Gothard and you essentially give him a pass and say that he is just untouchable, this is what happens.
Yeah, it's the reason Scientology was able to really grow and still be around is because they were able to get that tax-free status.
Yes.
That changed everything for them.
And they have Tom Cruise money.
And they have Tom Cruise money, but they have all these actors' money. One of the things I thought was interesting that they said, and it's true, is as Tom Cruise is to Scientology, the Duggars are to IBLP.
Yeah.
They are the public face. The Duggar life, take Josh out of it, looks great. Oh my God, that video when they went to Japan and the girls dressed as geishas. Holy guacamole. It was awful.
It was pretty bad.
It was awful.
I hope that we did an okay job talking about this.
I hope we did too. I mean, we obviously have our biases. I hope we owned them well.
And again, I'm going to say, I know religious people who are just as appalled by this as we are.
My bias is not towards religious people.
Not at all.
It is people who use religion as a means of control
and abuse
and abuse and domination, and that is the sole purpose of it.
Yeah.
They're not trying to make people's lives better.
No, and my heart breaks for the women and children in this.
For sure.
Because
for sure. It like makes me want to start
victims.
Like getting out in these communities to be like, there's another way to be.
I know. And also, I'm terrified of a whole generation of people who were raised on these wisdom booklets. Oh, that's another thing I want to say. Megan with an H, my bud.
Yes.
She.
This will be her third mention.
Her third mention.
She.
Megan with an H.
Do you know that that's in her Instagram profile?
I do. It's so cute.
Yeah.
Megan with an H told me she was homeschooled. I believe it was her. Was it her that I was talking with?
I don't remember.
Hold on. I need to make sure I'm right. I'll cut this out.
Okay.
Because
Megan with an H, we love you regardless of whether you were homeschooled or not.
I need to figure this out. Okay, hold on. This will just take me 1 second because I just had this conversation with her. Little Miss Recap. It is. Okay.
Cool.
So Megan with an H wanted me to clarify, and I feel like this is an important distinction. She was regular homeschooled.
Yep.
And not all homeschooled kids are sitting home learning from the wisdom booklets. And that is a
No,
very important distinction.
it is. I have a number of friends who have homeschooled their
Yes.
children, and
Yes. And it's
they are
fine.
in
Yes.
they are in great universities. They
Mm-hmm.
are doing great. You
Yes.
can absolutely teach your children at home. I This is not that.
Correct. This is the wisdom booklets, guys.
Yeah, this is not
And
education.
I'm
This
sure
is
Megan with an
indoctrination.
H was not taught through the
Indoctrinated.
wisdom booklets. If she
I'm
was,
guessing she
Megan
did
with
not
an
have a
H, you have to call me. We have to
Yeah,
undo
Megan
that
with an H, we would have
programming.
to put you on if you were learning, eye traps.
Next week, Little Miss Recap talks with Megan with an H about eye traps.
Eye traps.
No, but she's right to make sure we point that out because
It is,
these
it's
things
important.
do tend to get painted with the broad brush, especially homeschooling.
Right.
So
Yeah, our beef is not with homeschooling, our
nope,
beef is not with religious people.
nope.
Our beef
Our
was
beef is
is
not
with
with
abuse.
good Christians who
Good Christians.
do good work.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
My beef is with people who use that as a cudgel to abuse, control, and dominate women, because that's what it is.
yeah,
It's dominating women.
yeah, yeah. All right, girl. Any other thoughts? I mean, did you ever think this was going on behind the Duggars?
I mean, I knew probably something weird was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a bit, like I said, about the Quiverful and stuff, but I had never really dug deep into it.
You watch Plathville?
Oh, of course, watch
Oh,
Plathville.
love it so much. And what
I
I
love
love
Plathville
about
too.
it is that Ethan and Mariah and Micah are getting away from this.
Yeah, what I find most compelling about the Plaths is watching these children leave this world and figure out how to navigate the world,
Mhm.
not watching, the children of the corn do their homeschooling.
No.
It's
You see little Mercy sitting there with their wisdom booklets in the
with their wisdom
background.
booklets and poor Lydia in her prayer closet. But yeah,
You're
it
like,
is
get
so
that wisdom booklet off of Mercy right now.
that's right. It is just, oh God, it's so, what's mind-boggling to me is that we all grew up during the same time and in the
Mhm.
same place.
Mhm.
Like the Duggars are not much older than we are.
No. Because if this ATI bullshit, this homeschooling
Uh-huh.
started in 83, I was 6. That's when your
I
kids
was
start
10.
school. So,
Yep.
like, a generation my age was educated this way.
This way. And the
And
fact
believe
that
me,
this was
I've met them
happening,
all on Reddit.
what's amazing to me is this was happening in the same country that you and I grew up in.
Yeah.
And it's all happening in the same place.
Yeah.
And that's what's mind-boggling to me
Mhm.
is, these girls are getting thrown the wisdom booklets when they're 6. I remember vividly at 6 years old, my dad's like, you need to learn how to have a good handshake because women aren't taken as seriously as men in the world. And a
Mhm.
good handshake will help change that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There you
Like,
go.
it's just such a different way of being.
Yeah. It is. It's so I don't know. It's scary to know this is
Mhm.
out there.
It's
I
terrifying.
hope
And that
I
they're
hope
creating more of them.
I
Oh,
hope it's being diluted in some
I
way,
hope so too. I
but
hope I hope shows like this, because I thought it was a really well done documentary.
me too.
I hope things like this expose a lot of these fans of the Duggars, not the religious ones,
Mhm. Mhm.
but the people who just thought this was a great little family.
Yeah.
I hope it's helping them see this. You were sold a bill of goods,
Yeah.
and what you saw was the Oz and curtain. This was not what was happening.
I
What
mean,
was happening behind the curtain
it's
was
the same
horrific.
reason we watch Sister Wives, right? Like we
Yep.
watch
Yep.
it to see the family crumble and to see Cody's grip over these women deteriorate
Right.
and to see
Yeah.
the knife in the kidneys. Like that's what
The show
we're
has
here for.
gotten so much more compelling now that the women are like, no, we're not doing
Yeah.
this anymore.
Yeah. Yep. I'm all about women's rights.
Same.
Yeah. All right,
Same.
girl. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you about this enraging
Always.
topic.
Yes.
I feel
yes.
like
And
I
I
just
know,
need to put it behind me now.
yes, we can't talk about this anymore, but we would love to talk about it with you in the Facebook group.
Yes.
We would. And I know a lot of people were like really excited for us to talk about this. So please let us know your thoughts, good, bad, and different.
Yes.
We want to keep at least having the conversation, but we are done podcasting about this horror.
Yes. And if you haven't already, like Amanda said, jump in our Facebook group. It's there. It's open. We have discussions in there. We have, I don't know, several posts going now about what we're watching, what to watch, what to cover next.
Mhm.
So give us some ideas, get in there, leave us a review. We enjoy reviews.
Please.
I
We
mean,
do.
Megan with an H has done that. Has anyone else? I don't know. Yes, a lot of people.
A lot of you have. Thank you. But
Thank
please,
you.
if you haven't, we would love to hear them.
All right. Amanda, tell everyone where they can find you.
Instagram at Amanda Lipnack. And I know you linked that in the show notes because you're good that way.
And you can find me at Amy Archer Writer, or you can find the show at Little Miss Recap. Follow us on Instagram. We're over there.
Please. And find us on all of the major podcast apps. Well, obviously, you found us if you're listening to us. We don't need to tell you how to find us.
Now I need to go watch like Ted Lasso or something and just cleanse
Yeah,
my
something
palate.
to totally palate cleanse.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Take care, everyone.